Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
So I challenged myself to a New Year's resolution to stop drinking alcohol. It was going to be a break. I thought dry January, 30 days, I'll do it easily. I didn't feel like I had a problem. I didn't feel addicted. Still don't feel that I was addicted, even though there was moments that were probably extreme. Um, but it was not helping me physically. It wasn't healthy. So 30 days. In that moment, I started journaling, which was something I never did because of that same vulnerability and masculine, be tough and fix it sort of mentality.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's an author and motivational speaker. It's Sean Robinson. How are you doing today, Sean?
Good, Alex. How are you?
Doing good. We are so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
I'm from Eastern Ontario, about 2 hours away from Toronto, and I I like to be outside. I played hockey. I have two younger brothers, so we played a lot of driveway hockey, basketball, a lot of we had a swimming pool, so spent a lot of time in the pool. Anything outside.
Interesting you say pool because everyone thinks in Canada it's always cold up there. But with those sports that you did, especially with your younger brothers, what did it teach you about yourself?
I think patience. Um, Being the oldest of three boys, there was definitely a lot of moments where we didn't get along, and then moments we did. But I think being outside and being with my brothers and whatever we were up to, the youngest was never safe. The older two definitely picked on the youngest, but we did well.
Did you have to feel like a leader or someone that they could look up to and making sure you did the right decisions?
Oh yes, there was a lot of that over my lifetime, even still, where my parents like to tell me I'm still the example, and being the oldest, there was always the babysitting, there was always the paving the way, if you will, being the first to fight the battles that seemed a lot easier when the next ones came to it.
Did
That was
that
definite.
did that ever challenge you or did it kind of mess with how you lived your life because you had to do those certain tasks?
It was frustrating. There was definitely some tension at times because as I got older and things became, I was moving out and doing my own, but then I'm seeing how much easier, in ways my brothers had it compared to me with different things. It was frustrating, and I made sure it was brought up. Didn't go anywhere, but I commented.
I mean, I unfortunately didn't have any siblings, so anything I do, it would either get in trouble, have to set an example just for myself, but I kind of had to use my friends as those individuals or brothers in my life because I didn't have that opportunity.
So yeah, you had to pave your own way.
Exactly. And I hope I did a good job to my parents. They might tell me something different, or they might just say, "Oh, you did a good job."
Yeah.
With living in Canada, is there something that you enjoy doing? You talked about being outside. Was that kind of like an escape for you where you're able to kind of be yourself, be with the people you want to be with, and kind of find your next path?
Well, yes, there was a lot of work. My parents always had projects going on, and even still, they've got projects all the time. It's frustrating, but we had to be outside. If we were in and TV was on or there was video games or whatever, it would not be good. So we were either outside helping with those projects, or if we were out playing some sports or getting along, it seemed like there wasn't any backlash for if we were sitting inside. So um, because I had to be, it was good, but I liked it because I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong or going to get in trouble for it.
Was there a project that you actually enjoyed or something that was memorable for you?
No, not really. Um, it was a lot of housework stuff that when the pool went in, the yard had to get cleaned up, and there was always something to do, always upgrading, and it always seemed more than just the basic chores. It was a small property and not by any means a farm, but it was just always something they had going on, and I couldn't do certain things growing up because there was whatever agenda on the weekends and such. So it was frustrating.
As you're growing up, was there anyone that was a huge motivator or an inspiration for you?
Um, I don't know, to be honest. It was I knew what circle I was in with how like my family dynamic was and the way that I was brought up, and I knew what my friends were dealing with differently with the way they were brought up, and there was a lot of moments where I didn't understand why things were the way they were at my house. Language and yelling and just different tensions that my friends didn't have to deal with. So as far as like looking up to somebody, I feel like I had other like friends' parents that I looked up to that I thought um were people that I would have rather not lived with and been with, but at least talked to and like I kind of wish that was my environment at home. So I think growing up it was more more that scenario.
Why do you feel that you could trust in talking to your friends' parents or other people and not the people in your household?
I think they just had a different look at things, and we all come from different backgrounds and deal with different things, and I think with what they brought to the table compared to what I was dealing with, it was there was other lessons learned there. There was other experiences that I wasn't seeing when I was in that situation. It was just that different perspective and not learning a lot about what that meant until even recently, um, as far as development and what we deal with goes. There was just things that they did that were different.
Sometimes we're asked that fun question growing up. What is that dream job that we're wanting? So I'm going to ask you that. What was that dream job for you growing up?
My dream job, my dad was on the volunteer fire department, and he spent 17 years or something on, and it was always something that interested me as I was a kid. My brothers and I would help with their training nights and be patients and get carried out of basements and different scenarios. So that was always kind of a thing for me. And then when I got to be about 18, 19, I got on as a volunteer and spent a couple of years before my dad medically had to retire. He so we responded to calls together and had that kind of thing together. So I think that dream job was always going to be that.
What did being a volunteer firefighter teach you about yourself? Like we talk about like sometimes each aspect or career path, it always teaches us something that we didn't know we had in us. What was that for you?
That for me, so because I joined so young, I had that attitude that I knew more than I did. And I just passed my 20-year anniversary. So I did some reflecting lately and reflecting on where I'm at now compared to then.
Mhm.
It was way too young for me. There was way too much going on that I didn't even understand yet, and different scenarios I don't need to explain. You can paint the picture, but there was stuff I saw and stuff I dealt with that was way too early. It affected me in ways I'll never know. And I've learned more as the years have gone on in how to cope with that and how to deal with that in ways that when I was, probably at my most vulnerable, um, not prepared or not able to deal with it.
With going through the situations that you've seen as a firefighter, did it take a personal effect for you? And did it kind of change what was going on outside of the work?
I think it did. Different calls. There was some calls where there were people my age. I was 19, 20, and there was incidents with people that were of the same age and incidents where they didn't make it. And I had these moments where I knew their family didn't know, and I just didn't know how to deal with that information, knowing that I was knowing something that was so traumatic that was yet, and it wasn't for me to tell the family, but it was just knowing that I knew that it was pretty heavy.
Do you feel that you didn't get the opportunity to really fulfill that 18 to 22-year age with college or education, kind of going in that direction, really at a time that you could learn even more about yourself? Or do you feel that the path that you took was meant to be because it got you to where you are today?
I don't regret it at all. I do think that like I said, there's things that could have been a bit different or development wise, I could have seen at a later age. But it was great for me. Like it was a great experience getting out of high school, going in. I did go to college, and it kept me responsible through some pretty, vulnerable years with teenage years and early 20s. Um, so having that and having to be responsible for that definitely kept me on a straighter path compared to some friends, and it was great for me career wise too, because to have that in my back pocket as I applied to different jobs and as I grew into what is my career now, to have that experience behind me and work in construction, to be the volunteer firefighter and have all the safety stuff and have a very safety conscious background is crucial in such a um, hard environment as construction. So I don't regret it. It definitely helped pave the way for some other things.
You've talked about throughout vulnerability played a big part in your rise to the challenge story. Talk about some of those vulnerable moments for you and how did that play a big effect?
Okay, so vulnerability was never something I considered. It was never on my mind, and it wasn't me for the longest time. It wasn't me because of the firefighting and the construction and the tough male environment predominantly male environments that I was working in. You weren't allowed to be vulnerable. You weren't allowed to talk about it. You weren't allowed to have things that you weren't able to fix on your own. And that's very wrong. So vulnerability didn't occur to me until I made challenged myself because I got to 320 pounds and was feeling very miserable, reached what I call my rock bottom moment. Until I started to challenge myself and make some changes, did I realize that I almost had to be vulnerable in order to accept it and to have the people around me, not that I needed their acceptance, but to at least understand what it was I was working on.
What did it challenge you going through that weight journey, getting to that moment, and then how did you progress to get to that healthy stage?
So I challenged myself to a New Year's resolution to stop drinking alcohol. It was going to be a break. I thought dry January, 30 days. I'll do it easily. I didn't feel like I had a problem. I didn't feel addicted. Still don't feel that I was addicted, even though there was, moments that were probably extreme. Um, but it was not helping me physically. It wasn't healthy. So 30 days, in that moment, I started journaling, which was something I never did because of that same vulnerability and masculine, be tough and fix it sort of mentality. So the journal, starting to outlet, starting to listen to podcasts and read books and do things that I never did or hadn't done before, started to invite all of these other things that were me questioning why I was this way or why I was acting a certain way or how to change that. And it wasn't until allowing those things did I discover that we can change. We can change whenever we want to. We just have to want to.
Mhm. Do you feel that alcohol was maybe being used from a coping mechanism or something that was kind of relieving of stress or relieving of what's been going on or what you were seeing at work?
I think there was some of that for sure. I mean, it's definitely marketed that way. And, you're going to go on a Friday and I'm going to have a beer. I can't wait to have a beer because it's Friday. And that's just the way that we're used to doing it. That's the way I was used to doing it. So I think I used it in that way because that was just what was normal for me and the circles that I'm in. So, and then the habit and the routine of doing that, or when I'm out at a function or going camping or any of the versions of this outdoor life or, my hobbies, there was always like that element of I had to have this much booze there. And
Mhm.
it got to a point where I had to, I wanted to get through as many as I could. I was having a good time. And it never occurred to me that I would just not do that anymore. because it was just what everybody around me was doing, and it was such an appropriate thing to do, is have these drinks at these things, and to not do that seemed so foreign to me. But then by not having it and then deciding January wasn't enough and needing February and then March, 100 days became the challenge. And then at the time, my break was a full year, which is the theme of my book, is this 1 year period where I went from what am I doing, feeling miserable and unhealthy and 320 pounds, to this person that's been sober for an entire year and journaling, doing all the things that I thought I couldn't do, and then putting it out there for someone like where I was at that could use that version.
What's been the proudest moment of going through the sobriety journey that you've been on?
I think the proudest moment is what I've been able to do with my kids and my family. There's a lot that, like, my dad's a mechanic. He was on the fire department. He lost his dad when he was very young, and did what he could. My parents did what they could, and they did well. But there was a lot of time, a lot of times that the yelling and the drinking that he had and the way that we felt and walking on eggshells, and I say we, my brothers and I, like, there was a lot of, I'll say, generational trauma that I had, that I could see that I was starting to give to my kids. I was yelling. I thought the only way, it's not violence, but the only way to get a message across was to be that, fearful dad. You're afraid of him because it's dad and you want to make sure that you're in line because dad's coming. I grew up with that. So I that's all I knew. It wasn't that it was appropriate, but it's like when I said my friends' parents weren't doing that, I learned that later when I started to be different. So my proudest thing is definitely translating a different version to my kids that is more patient and doesn't go direct to the things that I didn't like.
Would you say that people in your inner circle saw the change in emotions, mentality, physicality in you through the beginning of the year to where you are at the end of the year?
They definitely did. Just for context, that year was the end of 2020 was my moment, and then 2021 is the year that is my book. So I've stayed sober since, out of choice. I've got to a point where I can handle the different environments, the situations, by not drinking. And I think more than it was when I started, it's a lot more acceptable now. There's a lot more people that are doing it, and there's some strength in numbers to that effect. But um, in the moment when I was um, starting and not drinking, it was like I had to convince the people around me that this is just who I was now. And to decide to not drink or not do something, whether it's drinking or whatever, that was popular with no real regard. It was like it would have been easier, and I mean this in the most sensitive way because I know there's some real issues with addiction and alcoholism, but it would have been easier for me to explain to my circles if I had a problem and I was forced to stop for other reasons. And it was kind of eye-opening to think that, when if I was to say, I wrecked my car and can't drive anymore and I'm not going to drink because of that, it would have been easier for people around me to say, yeah, yeah, no, I get it. And they would do their thing behind my back. But for me to just be like, yeah, I don't feel good, so I'm not going to drink. Well, but you made it 2 months. You're past your 100 days. You can here have one. It's like, well, no, that's not who I am anymore. So I think there was definitely a challenge to convince people that I just wasn't going to do these things anymore and could still go and have fun, and I still wanted to be a part of those moments.
I think that's such a stigma nowadays where people think that you have to have a reasoning to not drink or not to do something because they don't agree with what the reasoning is. And
Yeah.
I've been the same way where I have my own reasons why I don't drink, and I haven't drank in so long, but I have my personal reasoning. No one needs to know why. It's my choice. And
Mhm.
like you mentioned, you had your reasonings, and it might not be the traditional route, but it's your choice, and you are on that path. And you definitely did it during a big time of a year that was game changing, with 2020 being with where COVID was present, and that really caused a lot of drinking to happen. But you were challenged yourself during that time to continue and stay motivated. So, did that play an effect where COVID played a part and it kind of kept you motivated because you found other avenues to kind of keep your focus with your family and other things?
It definitely did. COVID, like I already had this routine, and my book is the habitual path, my path to overcoming habitual drinking. I'm coming from that habit and routine. I already had that habit and routine of having the drinks and having that lifestyle. So COVID year one, being 2020, only made it exponentially worse, as I know it
Yeah.
did for others. So by the time I got to the end of 2020 and we had say the first year and a half of this new life we had at that time, all I did was Zoom drinking parties with friends and have a couple extra drinks in the evening because like even on the volunteer fire department, like I never mixed the two, but we weren't even doing training for a while. Like we do training every week and we weren't even doing that because we were just limiting people
Mhm.
together. So I wasn't even going to like calls or training. So all there was the drink. There wasn't, but that it was just a lot of what magnified routine I had already. So by the end of 2020, and there was that year to year and a half of that lifestyle, that's where like I call it my rock bottom because like I felt miserable. I was so negative and cynical. Everything woe is me. Nothing's, things weren't as terrible, but I just felt at my worst in that moment and knew something had to change.
Did you ever think that you would write a story, write a book, and sharing your journey as a way to really share the journey that you were on? Or did you feel that this was meant to be because I know I could probably help other people out there?
This was always for me. This was like I said, I started to journal and it was very personal. It was me essentially in the beginning just beating myself up, telling myself I know better, you know what to do, why can't you do it? Stop being this way and not saying nice things. So in the beginning where I wrote this way, it was not for anybody else. I didn't want to listen to anybody else that saw or heard these things and try and fix it for me or try and offer advice or to judge me for it. So as I started to go through this journey and I started to, okay, I'm taking a break from drinking and hey, well, I kind of start listening to podcasts because I drive 45 minutes to an hour each way to work and wanted to make better use of that time. So as I started listening to more podcasts and getting into some School of Greatness and Ed Milet and all the different things that were about that positive personal development sort of angle, I started to learn some tricks and tools and I read some books and audiobooks and Atomic Habits and all these things that started to translate in ways that I would now journal about the progression and journal about what I was going through and how I was overcoming certain things. And by the end of that year in this journal, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Oh, I could write a book." And I was like, it was just an expression that I had been through so much, but then it dawned on me like I kind of had written a book.
Mm.
I needed to be cleaned up so like there was context for the reader to understand where I was coming from, but I thought like I needed this when I got started. I needed this as a version that wasn't the doctor, wasn't the professional that was trying to, you know, that just didn't make me feel like they were above me in any way. It was something that I could have used for that normal everyday person that went through a typical issue in their own way, but maybe somewhat related to what I was going through. And it was just something I needed when I started. And I thought like vulnerability and all these things that we just need to see more of. I could do that in order to help my old self and decided to go through with self-publishing and just putting myself out there.
What's been kind of the reaction people are sharing with you when they're reading your story?
It's been very positive. It's been extremely positive. Actually, my mom was the only one to give me trouble. I was getting support from so many people, and then I just because I self-published, and then it was available. There was no fancy rollout, or it just wasn't like the big. the publishing companies and high profile writers. It was very much like, okay, here it is, it's available now. So there was no kind of big announcement because at the end people knew I was working on it. So other people had read it before her. I didn't give her some special copy. So someone had read it, the ebook, commented on the Facebook, giving me some really great praise. And my mom had read it and was like, "This is not good." Like she gave me trouble because I didn't. But it's been extremely positive. I'm getting a lot of good support from because it's outside my circle now. It was really difficult to get it outside the people that knew me. So, things like podcasting and different things, it's now to people and through my social platforms where I'm getting a lot of people I don't know reach out that it's helped or that they're seeing the benefit of trying a few of the things that I tried or relating portions of it to their story. And even though it was about that not drinking and the challenges, it's really about anything that we are dealing with that we need to get rid of. It could be anything that is that thing that just holds you back.
Was your mom shocked by anything? Like, did she not know certain things and maybe she got that reaction to you?
No, I think she was just worried that there'd be something in there that would not look good for her. And there we had it was family dynamics. Like every I think family has their
Yep.
stuff, and I was very aware of that. Like I didn't want to put this out there to the effect of anybody else. I wasn't looking to bring anybody down. So I was very careful what I did and didn't put that was related to the message I was trying to say in this book, but also to not hurt someone else. So she didn't know that I was very aware of that, but I didn't want her to read it either because I did, like she's read it now, but like I didn't want anyone's influence. I didn't want fact checking. I didn't
Mm.
want um I don't like that. You need to change it. To certain respects, I had multiple edits and I had some trusted close people read it and give me some feedback, but there was definitely certain people I didn't, including my mother, that I didn't want that from. It was going to come out. It was going to be what it was, and I was careful not to try and upset anyone.
After writing this book, has it gotten you motivated to write another one or like share another journey of your experience? Or do you feel that you have some goals that pertain to the story, but in different avenues?
It's definitely like this journey for me started with this moment and the not drinking and has really compounded into so much more. I've since lost just about 100 pounds, so I'm probably a couple weeks away from the weigh-in that will be my 100 pound lost and different dieting, different things I've learned. It's definitely reached a point where I could look into a volume two or volume three and basically give that extension to that not drinking and what that did and then phase two or phase three. Like there's definitely things that I can do and I've continued to listen to all these podcasts. I've continued to read books and audiobooks and I get 45 minutes to an hour twice a day of content that like I come home and my wife, like I talk to her and I'm like, oh, you got to read this book. Like it's you. It'll help you so much. And we have 3 kids. There's no time for that. She doesn't have the commute that I have. So while she tries to listen to some of the stuff, like most people, they don't have that kind of time. So um I call it a hobby, but a part of my own therapy is my social pages and my YouTube channel and different things I'm trying because not only is it good for me, but anyone that can't get that content or needs that quick 60-second YouTube or pictures because they're following certain pages. Um, I'm trying to put what I'm learning from all these avenues and courses I'm taking into something that can kind of give back to someone else that doesn't have this kind of time.
With content creation, have people reached out to you that been on similar journeys and it shows like the connection that they've had from listening to your story and listening to maybe podcasts that you've been on and the content that you have shared?
I have for sure. There's definitely a circle of people that that I've met in this journey, and it's a lot of sharing. It's a lot of, like, this conversation, especially where we're having this, and I try to support the people that I'm on. So I add to to LinkedIn, and I follow the pages, and I share the content, and I like and do all the things, because this environment needs that, right? I'm not looking to come on here and then take off, go to the next one. It's important that you and I both, in this scenario, get the same benefit. So um, this is very much a hobby for me, because it's, like I said, it's a form of therapy that I can share this journey for someone, especially coming from firefighting and construction and toxic masculinity and generational trauma and all these things that I've gone through, that people aren't talking about, or men aren't talking about, that will help other people say, you know what, I can do that too.
Sometimes our listeners like to hear this question be asked: when you're not working, what does Sean like to do for fun?
Well, when I'm not working, and my kids are busy, they're three under 10, so we've got lots of little sports things. So I like soccer and hockey and the things we're doing with them. I just spend a lot of time on my social pages and YouTube stuff. It takes a lot of time, and I know that the in order to get good at it myself, because it's really all just development for me. It just takes enough time, so I spend a lot of time on that.
Looking at your journey you've been on and how when you grew up, family was a big part of your life, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood is it's a little different than what I thought growing up, because, like I said, that masculine presence that you're afraid of a lot. And we have a great relationship, but there was definitely a lot growing up that I thought of differently. Now, you still have to be not of fear in your kids, but I want to be a better teacher. So I want to be the first um, resource for them to learn a lot of these things, and to get away from that toxic masculine for my boys, and then just strength for my little girl. I just want to be a good teacher for them, and to give them a good example. And that, for fatherhood, is important for me now.
What does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next few years?
Well, I want to keep learning. I want to keep on this path of personal development, and sharing, and just learning. I think what I've been able to do so far is only going to get better. And I've started hosting workshops at the local mental health unit in town here, and just talking about healthy habits, and leaving behind common excuses and different common things that I went through, and I think that we all kind of go through when we're going from one place to another. Um, I just think more of that, getting into more speaking, um, building more, personal content, and just working on it.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
I would share that there will always be obstacles. When we expect them, we go in a little bit more prepared, and in that preparation, we can't run a marathon without first learning how, or getting comfortable with putting our shoes on. So don't think about the marathon or climbing the mountain. Just think about putting the shoes on. Once you get comfortable with that small step, maybe walk to the mailbox, or maybe just open the door and look outside. Just add the small things to what you're already doing, and then you'll eventually get to a point where you're running that marathon, or you're climbing that mountain, and you're translating that into every other area.
Well, Sean, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate having me on your show.
Tune in next time to hear my next guest talk about their rise to the challenge. Remember to follow, subscribe on all major audio platforms. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get full length episode in video format. What path do you take to accomplish your goals? You decide.